Welcome to the Aquarium Dilemmas podcast. I'm your host, ScienceGal Aquatics. I'm Carrie, and this is my co-host,
Jesse, and welcome to Aquarium Dilemmas. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much for listening. I highly appreciate you being here. Thank you.
We have a wonderful dilemma and topic today. Moving your fish.
Why and how? Why is it necessary to move them, if necessary at all? Just why and how, and a few issues that you might see that pops up that you might want to move them. It's probably best to move them.
I'll go with the first one of overcrowding in a community tank. You have too many live bearers in there, and you picked them up from the pet store, and you had males and females.
Yes.
And now you have a tank full of males and females and a bunch of baby fry.
A bunch of babies. Should you move them or not? I've moved them in the past, and I've mainly will probably go to guppies. That's probably the fish we'll go to the most when it comes to discussing fry. But I have moved them out of the tank in years past. I have left them in recent years, but there's a point that you can. I love having like a 55-gallon heavily planted community live bear tank, but there's still a point where sometimes you just need to move the fry and shuffle things around and start a new tank, and it's best to start a new community just because you have so many.
Yeah, so with the live bearers, can you keep them all in one tank and it be okay for quite a while, or should you always move them, not move them?
I think it honestly comes down to the filtration. If you have plenty of, not necessarily like you have to have 3 filters on your tank, but if you have good filtration in the sense that you have biological media or biological filtration on your tank, and you have enough bacteria in your tank to support that heavily populated community tank, then you're probably better off. But if you're a little bit newer and you don't have the correct bacteria in your tank to support that community, then it's best to either get that on your tank so your tank can support more, or move them into another tank. But again, don't put them in there the first day you set it up either. Let that tank run, especially if you have the time, let it run for a while, plan it out, and then move a batch of fry over to that new tank and let them grow out there.
I see. Well, I know no matter what, if you choose to leave them in there, there's always going to be a little bit of predation as far as the adults will pick off some of the fry. Yes,
and I don't notice a lot, but just because I don't notice it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I'm sure even just keeping a guppy tank only, there's a point where I'm sure I'm losing. And in my head, if I like to feed the guppies a smaller amount a couple of times a day. But in my head, I feel like if they're well fed, I don't lose as many fry. But I'm sure I do, just because I don't see it. But I still have good grow out rates when I leave the fry in there now, because I do feel like all the live plants, and I don't keep them in all 10 gallons anymore. I have some larger tanks, some 20 gallons. I have the 55 gallons, so they have more room. But if you have a 5-gallon guppy tank or 10-gallon guppy tank, and they've had many, many generations of fry in there, and most of them's growed up, then I'm sure it can be a little overcrowded. But I think honestly it all comes down, and that's a lot of words to say, it all comes down to how much biological filtration you have on your tank. If you can support, if everybody looks healthy and everybody's growing and your tank's clear and it's really pretty, everything's going good, then it just comes down to your biological filtration. If your nitrogen cycle can support that many fish.
And I know there's some species that you have to separate the fry or the eggs from the parents, because otherwise they will absolutely destroy it.
I'm talking live bears mainly when it comes to fry. I would love to be able to say that I am really good at the eggs, but I am not. So I know many, many fish out there, you do have to take the eggs out and put them in like an egg tumbler to have, but I don't have experience in that. So when we talk about fry, we're mainly talking about live bear fry. I will say that.
So it is okay to leave them in the tank moving forward as long as there's room and suitable hiding spots and filtration.
The live plants has 100% drastically changed how I keep my fry. I before just kept plastic decor in the tanks, and it worked. They had some hiding spots, but they're having the live plants. It's just so many, numerous reasons why it's beneficial for your tank. But there's so many more hidey spots for the fry. So, but in years past, going back to more of the beginning, and we might kind of skip around a little bit, but going back to more of the beginning of my fish keeping, I would take all the fry out. Every time I would see a fry or a new batch of fry, I would separate them into a new tank. My parents didn't necessarily love me so much for starting so many new tanks, and they were more cold water guppies when I was younger. But then when I moved into doing my biology degree and my undergrad for my research, I wanted to measure the fry and how they got manipulated by certain stress. So I would move the fry into a separate little holding container. And I just didn't have I would lose a lot of fry just because I was moving them when they were, guppies are hardy. They are. But they're still fragile to an extent, especially when they're fry. They're young. So I would then let the female drop the fry in a breeder box. And they work great. I don't mind breeder boxes. It's just, I feel like there's better ways to do things for me now. But at the time, I would let them drop in the breeder boxes and then move the female back into the tank after a couple of days to give her some time away from the male. But they just get so dirty so quick. So if you like breeder boxes, they do work great. I don't necessarily say don't use them. It's just be aware they do get dirty. That was my issue with them, was when I was trying to separate the fry. So now, like just from general with guppies, if you want to separate the fry and you don't want to keep them in there at all, I would recommend setting up a grow out tank for the fry, moving the female in there, letting her drop the fry, then after a day or two, moving her back into her original tank instead of just soon as the fry drop, scoop them out and put them in there, or letting her give birth in a breeder box and keeping the fry in there for 2 weeks and then moving them in. I didn't have awful luck. I just didn't have the best luck doing that, if that makes sense at all.
It does make sense. And I'm coming from the standpoint of a new hobbyist that it's got some live bears, got some mollies, or has some guppies or some platies, and the day before they looked at their tank, everything was awesome. They fed their fish, everything was wonderful, everything was beautiful, and then the next day they come in and what's all this? These new little things swimming in there.
Yeah, like what are these babies? Where did these come from?
Yeah, where did all this come from?
And you can totally leave them in there. I won't say you're going to lose them or they're going to. It's just, it depends on that particular fry. It's not a guarantee. But if you don't want the babies at all, then you can scoop them up and take them back to your local fish store and see if they'll take the donated fry. If you just don't wish to keep them at all, and then know that you do have males and female live bears, and you're probably going to see fry again.
Yeah, it's going to happen again and again.
And I've had larger, like, broods of fry over the years, but typically I don't get hundreds every time. I'll get 15 to 20. And so each batch, each brood size is going to be slightly different too.
Will
but
vary a little bit.
Yeah. But don't be surprised at all if this is your first time keeping live bears, and you're going to see fry at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And so you should kind of come up with a game plan if you want to keep them or not.
Absolutely. And the size of the tank will matter for the overpopulation of that tank. If it's a 20 long or something of that size or a little bit bigger, I feel that you can keep a lot of guppies in there, and you can keep a lot of mollies, platies.
You can, but again, it just comes down on the filtration of your tank. It comes down to if your cycle can handle that many live bears in your tank. If it can, then you can, and it's planted and it's a 20 long, sure, yeah, you can keep quite a bit in there. But if you don't have a well-established bacteria in there that can handle that many guppies or mollies, then, or platies or whatever you choose to keep, then you need to probably keep the population down a little bit lower until that builds up. And over time, like, you don't want to add a bunch of fish in there all at once, but if you have a tank for a while and you add one or two here and there, and then you enjoy it for a while and then add one or two, it's going to gradually build up, and over time you can have a larger one. But I wouldn't recommend having a large community tank if you don't have the adequate bacteria in there to support that large community tank.
True, very, very true. Which leads into the other thing. You have a large community tank. You've gotten some different fish in there, and now you're noticing that there's one fish in particular
that's just not getting along.
Yeah, that is either getting picked on or he's doing the picking to everybody else.
Yes, and I don't have any very little experience when it comes to keeping cichlid fish. I don't have the experience, and I've been told here and there from various different friends that keep fish that sometimes to combat aggression, you need to add another one. I don't want to go down that road because I don't know the advice. But if you have, from my experience with the fish that I keep, if I have one that's super nippy that just doesn't get along with the other one, I do move that fish into a separate tank. And if you can't get a separate tank to keep that fish and just set up a whole new tank for one fish, then maybe find a friend that keeps fish that can keep it, or talk to your local fish store or something like that. But sometimes it's surprising what fish don't get along, and it's fish specific. Each fish has its own personality. It's like, generally, yes, you can keep those fish together, but you might come across that one male guppy that's just abnormally nippy. And he needs to be in a new guppy tank and see what happens.
And then that brings to the last start of talking points of moving fish. You have a community tank and you see one fish that's just acting super strange, might have something going on.
Gasping at the surface, has some kind of bacteria infection or something on there. It's a good idea to move that fish into a quarantine tank or a hospital tank, or somewhere that you can treat that fish in the way that you wish to treat that fish for whatever sickness. It's very difficult. I have run across a handful of illnesses, but there's a few that's very hard to know 100% if that's what it is, and you just don't want that to spread to other fish. So it's a good idea to move that fish into some kind of hospital tank or quarantine tank, or just somewhere where you can get the medicine you need, because you just don't want that to spread.
Absolutely. And that's a whole nother dilemma in itself. Fish sicknesses.
Yeah,
and we'll have to get into that another time of the ones that we have personally dealt with. Personally dealt with.
Yes.
So in moving these fish, on the small side, if I'm just moving live bears or smaller fish to another already, I'm going to say, established tank, or it's already been running, it's already cycled, is there anything special I need to do?
Well, just keep in mind, it's a stressful, even if you're super careful and delicate, it's stressful for the fish, and then depending on the fish, stressful for you to move that fish to another tank. But generally with live bears that I move, I use a fish net. I just use a fish net. I know that I guess it's a specimen container, like the little containers you see at the fish store that just hang on the side where they dump the fish in there. Yep. To get it ready for bagging. Those are really helpful to have when moving fish because you can scoop them out, put them in there, and you don't have to just keep them in the net and run across the fish room and hope they don't jump. And you can put them in like a little specimen container after you net them. And just I used to not be as careful as I should. I thought I was being careful, I guess, for a teenager. But when you're moving your fish with like a fish net or whatever you're using, keep in mind it is stressful. So you want to be gentle. You don't want to just be rough and tear up your whole tank trying to scoop that fish out. It's hard. Some fish are just so hard to catch. You can't help but chase it. But just be as gentle as you can. And there's I know puffers that I've kept over the years. I don't necessarily recommend using a net for some fish because I get scared that they're going to get stuck. So I'm notorious for collecting like little plastic scoops of various sizes. So then their fins don't get stuck in the little holes of the net. But typically with shrimp, the guppies, mollies, platies, live bears, rice fish, things that I've moved from betas, just various things, plecos. I have different fish nets that I use. And that was one thing growing up. I just had the same fish net for everything. But if you can't have one for every tank, at least get a good couple so you can use your clean ones and not cross-contaminate while you're cleaning and drying the other fish nets. But a fish net and a specimen container is a really good idea.
A container with some fish water, a little bit of fish water already in it, so that I can take what I'm needing out, put in there, and then I can comfortably move it and then just slowly get it down in the water and pour it out and let the fish just kind of swim out instead of being dumped out.
Yeah, I would just I was a teenager, so I was as gentle as I could be but I wasn't as gentle as I am now. Yeah, I just kind of let the fish, the best I can, swim out on its own. Occasionally, you might have to kind of shuffle it around a little bit just to get it to where it can swim out. But just if you can, let the fish swim out on its own, at its own pace. There's no rush. If it wants to kind of hang out in the fish net for a minute, just let it hang out, until it's ready to go into its new tank. But again, I would just scoop them out and then just put my hand over the net, and there's nothing wrong with it, especially if it's just right there, if it's like a foot away. But I find scooping them into a specimen container and then moving it, because I am a klutz. You don't want to trip over your own foot because you're holding your fish net and your hand over it, and then, so I just
and then everything goes south.
Yeah, it's one of those info commercials, like, do you have trouble walking across your fish room holding a fish net? These specimen containers are for you. I did not have one until, honestly, relatively recently, and they are so helpful. Just so helpful. So, a net, especially a couple extra ones, and various sizes, too. It's nice to have some small ones and some medium ones and some large ones.
Well, going on to the cross-contamination, so let's say I got a sick fish.
Yes.
And I'm moving it. That, I believe, is where the cross-contamination is very important.
Yeah.
On when you get that fish out, you don't want that net back in the fish water again until it is properly cleaned.
Properly clean it. I usually dip my stuff in vinegar and water and then let it dry for a while. But I'm sure there's even better ways to clean things than that. But I'll clean them, let them soak for a while. And then, but if it's, like, I do have one set, a siphon and a net that's just for a sick.
For a sick tank?
For sick. But
for a contaminated tank?
The one thing I don't necessarily always move out when I see it is ick, depending on the severity of it. I usually just treat the whole tank when it comes to that, but it's whatever.
And we'll get into that into another podcast about treating your tank if you believe your entire tank is sick with something. So that leads me into, okay, we've dipped out.
And when we do, going back just a second, like when I do move fish around again, try to get them as close to possible as you can. Let it set. If you have a brand new tank and you want to move fish in there, let it set for a while. Like, let it set for a while. You don't have to do it. Don't do that the same day. Like, try to get it to, if you have a tank that's colder, turn your heater on, get it prepped, get it as close to the parameters as possible to the tank that they are coming from.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
then move them. Like, that's very important. I don't think we've said that. But
that is a good side note. If you
do what you can to get them.
If you're moving for overpopulation reasons or spreading fish out because one's nipping another and you have another tank for that fish to go to, make sure the tank is cycled and the water temperature and the parameters are close to the same. You wouldn't want to move your fish from a 60-degree water to a tank over here that you got a heater in that's at 82 degrees. You're cooking your fish there. And that even makes the moving part even more stressful on the fish. Now, we've talked about moving the sick fish out. And this kind of ties into that. So I'm moving a sick fish out and I'm wanting to treat it, but I really don't have like another tank per se to put it in. I know we've done a couple different things to see what we could do for that fish, but still be able to monitor that fish.
Yeah.
And the easiest, and this leads into the moving of other types of fish, is I've just used a Tupperware container with a lid that I could put on it and an air stone so that it would have plenty of oxygen so that we could medicate the fish and watch the fish.
Yeah, but I don't, when we say air, I usually make it real low. I don't make it to where they're like, they can't, I try to make it real low.
Well, where they have
low.
oxygen. The point is that they have plenty of oxygen.
But there's been so many ways over the years of treating how, I've used Tupperware containers, totes, actual tanks. Like, I've used a lot of different things over the years for emergency reasons. So I'm sure we'll get into, but
well, and the other thing is what happens, and we've had this happen. What happens when you have a fish and it is outgrowed your tank?
Yeah, that's another reason why.
Another reason to move one. It is not having its best life and it needs a bigger home.
Yes, and when we talk about this story, it's going to be silver arowana related, because we got our silver arowana when it was real tiny. I'm still not really entirely sure if it's a he or she, but it was in a 10-gallon tank. It was just a few inches. So when I bought that fish from the fish store, we let it grow for a while in a 20 long. So then it quickly outgrew that 20 long. And if I remember right, moving it from the 20 long to the 55-gallon, we used an extra large fish net.
Yes.
To do that. And it
was very stressful on the fish and us.
Yes. I was nervous. I assumed The silver arowana was nervous. I thought about how to move this fish to this larger tank because I know they're so, I just assume going into it that if you have to ask if the fish is going to jump, it's probably going to jump, and most fish at some point jump. But silver arowanas they're jumpers. And so that's how we moved. And I was nervous that it was going to get stuck in the fish net, but it was only going from, if you're watching this, that's only 2 feet away. It was a very short distance from where the 55 was from the 20 long. So we used a fish net and just put our hand over the net and hoped that everything was going to work out. And then we let the silver arowana grow in that 55 gallon for a while. I can't remember exactly how many months, but it wasn't very long. And it outgrew the 55 gallon.
This happened all within just barely over a year time span.
If that, I think it might even been 6 months from that point. It grew fast is the point. If you have plans to keep a silver arowana, know that they grow fast. That is not a myth. That is true.
And there's some cichlids out there that do the same.
Yes.
So on the next round of moving this fish, we had to go to the tote method.
Yeah. And we were nervous. We were nervous about this move because the 180 gallon tank that we got at this point is upstairs. So we had to move him through the fish room, up the stairs, through the top level of the house. And I was so nervous. We thought about this on how to do this for, I don't know, a week at least, probably, of just the best way that we could come up with how to move him into this new tank or her into this new tank. So we did use a tote. We used the larger fish net again to get them in. So we scooped them out and put them into that tote. And if I remember right, he didn't jump or anything. He kind of just, we put the fish net in there, and he didn't swim into it by any means, but we didn't have to go chasing around. He just, we just kind of scooped him and then let him swim out of the net and put him in the tote. And we made it a good amount of water in there, but so we could carry it comfortably without sloshing. I didn't want it to slosh from side to side, So it was a good amount of water, but it wasn't all the way to the top by any means.
No.
And then we carried it up the steps.
Yep, and slowly submerged it into the 180 and let him out.
Yes. And all was well. There's no need to worry.
When moving larger fish, in my opinion, you're going to have to take a few more steps in preparation. It might be a bigger fish net. It might be having your significant other or a friend help you coax it either into the tote or into the big fish net. And you might have to use a net just to coax him into or her into the container that you're going to use to move it. With the quote unquote monster fish, there's several ways they move them, and I feel that a tote with a lid is your surefire best way, because it is going to eliminate a lot of jumping, a lot of flopping,
it definitely
a lot of fighting, and you can at least control the fish without having to necessarily touch it, which has been talked about as far as if you touch them, it ruins their slime coat.
Yeah, I've just been taught you don't want to touch their slime coat to disrupt that slime coat the least amount as you can. And I've seen some people move fish with their bare hands, and it was a lot less stressful. It's just, that's what I've been told. So I try to avoid just touching their slime coat. But if you have a way that works, because I've seen it done it wasn't as stressful, but it's what works for you and that particular fish. Not all fish will just swim right up to your hand and let you just. So I use a fish net mostly. And like I said, I'm really, especially with the live bears, I collect little plastic scoopers with handles, and I really like using those little scoops with, I think they're from the laundry. I'm not really sure where I get them, but I love the little tiny scoops. They're like 1 inch, and I move fry into the little special. They kind of are at the top, and I'll just kind of break that surface tension, and they just kind of go right into the scoop, and it's quick, and I don't have to chase them all around, because sometimes those fry are quick. But generally now, I don't move the fry out a whole lot. Going back to the fry, I like to let the females and the males in the fry, I just leave them in the tank. Mostly now. Every once in a while, I'll see a new fry that's it's grown up a little bit, that I'm like, oh, I think that fry would be really pretty in the community tank. So I'll move 1 or 2 fry into the community tank. I have a 55-gallon community tank that's just mainly guppies at the moment. But every once in a while, I'll pick a fry out. So I don't move them at all like I used to. But in the beginning, I did. And if you feel like you want to move them, again, I had the best luck just setting up the fry tank in prep for all these fry that was coming. You can see the females grow larger and larger. You know they're coming. And then I just moved the female into that tank, let her drop the fry, give her a day or two away from the males, and then I moved her back into her original tank, is how it works best for me personally now. But again, I don't mind the breeder boxes. They're not my favorite. They do work for the purpose they're intended. I just don't like how dirty they get.
Well, and back to the original dilemma. You have one tank. I'm talking for the average, normal hobbyist that just started up. You got one tank. It's either gotten overpopulated. You got one fish that's either really getting picked on all the time or is doing all the getting picked on. Or something just got way too big.
Yeah.
Will be your dilemmas of why you all of a sudden need to move a fish. And if you can have the foresight to start setting up another tank or a quarantine area for a fish, whether it be a smaller tank just for the time being, that is always a good idea to have.
Yeah, I think this is probably, it's 100% my opinion. I feel like the live bears is just the one that you see the most fry from. They just reproduce so quickly, relatively, honestly, really easily. Whereas like egg scatters, egg layers are a little bit more difficult. The eggs can fungus, and you just don't get fry as often. So I feel like if you go to the fish store and you pick out a colorful fish, you don't necessarily know if it's a live bear or not. You're gonna know pretty quickly if they are fry, because you're gonna see babies unexpectedly swimming around in your tank, and you can either keep them in there, move them, take them back to the fish store. You might lose a few just because the parents eat them up.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us towards the end of it, of what you ultimately want to do. And no matter what, when you're setting up that tank to move a fish that's gotten way too big or been picked on or overpopulated, however, you want your water temperature for sure and your parameters as close as you can to the original tank that they were in. Within reason, obviously.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think that's a real common overpopulation, sick, aggressive, and overgrowing the tank.
Well,
I'm sure there's more reasons, but I think those are really common occurrences of why you would want to move them around or shuffle them around.
Well, those are the common ones, just like we talked about with the arowana. They told us he was going to grow. They didn't tell us he was going to grow at a rate that was astronomical from...
Yeah, they said I had plenty of time to keep them in at 20 long. And, there might be some that grow slower and some that even grow faster than this one. But this one grew up really quick. And I knew what I was getting into, but I didn't fully grasp it. And I'm so glad I did, because me and this silver arowana, man, we have grown to love each other through different things that have popped up. And even now, he had that 180 is a good sized tank, but it is going to be, again, quickly outgrown, and we're going to have to either upgrade and go through it all again and move them into an even bigger tank.
Yes. Stay tuned for the dilemma of how to move him now, because at this point,
and I still think we're going to do the same method. We'll use a tote. I just think it's stressful. Moving fish is stressful, no matter small or large. You just want them to be okay.
We'll be able to use a tote. We will not be able to use a fish net unless you're talking a fish net for catching actual fish in the outdoors.
Yes, we would have to get this one that we have is not going to be large enough.
At this point, he is so big, it's either going to be by hand to the tote or scoop him with the tote, because we're talking over a 2-foot long fish at this point.
Yeah, he's not even fully grown, but I love him so much.
And that will be our dilemma, so stay tuned for that.
Well, I hope you've learned something today in this podcast on why you should move fish and how to move fish. There's not a wrong or right way to move them at all. It's just whatever works best for you. Everybody has their own method. You have your own routine, but hopefully you can pick up a few pointers from us to make your routine just a little bit easier.
The main thing is to try not to stress the fish out. Don't dump them out like you're dumping out a bag of play sand.
Be gentle. You don't want to rough up their fins and their skin coat or their slime coat in any way at all. And
try to keep all of your tanks that have similar species in it of all the same temperature. Keep your parameters about the same. That way, if you see that you need to move a fish, you can easily move the fish, because you know that the tank right next to it or the tank right down the hall,
it's not going to be 100.
Same.
It's almost the same. It's not ever. I can have 2 tanks next to each other with the same things in it, and they're going to be slightly different. But if you can maintain, especially with like my guppy tanks, like I said, if I come down here and I see a guppy fry that's a little bit bigger, and you can see it's, I think that one's going to look really good in the community tank, then I'll move that one fry and put him in the community tank and let him or her grow. If it's a pretty female or something like that, let them grow out in the community tank and try to expand that population. But it works a lot easier when the tanks are very similar in parameters, temperature, pH. They both have live plants. It's helpful on yourself if you want to move fish like that, to kind of spread out your population, or add to another one from, or if you have one particular line and you want to continue that line, you got to have another tank of those. It's easier when things match the best you can.
Absolutely, 100%.
But again, thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate you. And if you want to check out and watch this podcast, check out the memberships on ScienceGal Aquatics over on YouTube.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Bye.